Holy shit, the teasing that's going on in that. The teasing that's going on in this series is insane already, and I absolutely love it. I wouldn't expect anything else from Studio Passion. I've seen, like, I've looked a little bit into the release history of the studio, and holy shit, like, let me just say they're probably holding back really hard on that. Because they've done some stuff where it's kind of like almost not safe for work, but yeah. I mean, obviously we do have a lot of that content in here as well, not specifically, but I would say like very tasteful going into like the nude stuff, but not going too much, right? We do have teasing, we do have very much like shameless natural behavior in that sense, right? Because Holo is a character who is not human, who is not used to these human conventions, who is maybe also not completely used to the effect she has on other people, although I'm pretty sure she is aware enough because she actually puts it into her teasing behavior. She actually is very amused by Lawrence's and other people's reaction to her. We do see that in this episode already here. So let's just go through it. Let's go through the plot for a second. We'll put it up now. Lawrence sleeping in the sleeping, interestingly enough, as always, like I think he was sleeping actually besides the cart even in the in the beginning here, which is like very gentlemanly of him, although like honestly this card is big enough for both of them, so he could just do it. But I think it's him, right? It's his own. I would have to read into it again, but I think it's at the very least 80% him actually not wanting to do that, which I can really relate to if you are a young person, right? A young guy who hasn't met many like relationships, who isn't used to women all that much. So you're on the hesitant side, especially if you are somebody who grew up respecting other people's boundaries. Obviously there's other people, more than enough other people, especially in those times, but especially if you are somebody who has been growing up respecting other people's autonomy, and maybe also him putting women on a pedestal a little bit too much, right? As somebody who is like a traveling merchant, who is, I would assume in these times, very much interacting more with men than with women. And also, yeah, women is something you do when you settle down, right? When you have your own shop, which is not what Lawrence is doing. Maybe it's his end game, but it's definitely not what he is doing right now. He's traveling around, he's doing deals, whatever. His world is the business world, right? The business world of the traveling merchant, right? Knowing the towns, knowing the currencies, knowing the little tricks, right? Like the trade thing that we've seen there. And that is one of the cool aspects of Spice and Wolf, that we do really have actual mercantile aspects in here. Stuff that maybe back in the day was invented and used, and today we can still see some of the principles apply here. Not all of them, mind you, like obviously the trade of commodities is not as clear anymore. These days we use money for almost anything, but I do still think that it would be cool if we would be using like the trade of commodities a little bit more, or like the trade of work for commodities, right? I do work for you for a specific amount of time, and then I can maybe like you help a farmer or whatever, and they give you some of their like their harvest, some of what they actually were able to grow. So this is a nice way to do it, I think, and it would be cool if this was more, if this would be happening more again, at the very least, like here in the West, where we just pay with money these days. I do feel we could use a little bit more autonomy and like intra-communal, which means within a certain smaller community, exchange, right? Exchange of commodities or work hours or whatever. And we do have constantly like this feels a lot like a slice of life, and I think this is how it's supposed to feel in a way, right? But it is a very, very unusual slice of life. It's a slice of life with a twist, right? Lawrence has his job, he's a traveling merchant, he's going around towns, he has his traveling strategy, and as we go on we will probably see more and more what his trading world is actually like. And Holo's traveling with him because she wants to go to the north, and he's like, all right, I'll take you there at the very least a portion of the way, and we'll see how far we go. So she is trying to make herself useful in being a wise wolf, right? Somebody who, as we find out later, might be a very good judge of character, might be very well versed, right? Very wise when it comes to telling if somebody's telling the truth or not, and also has some of that wisdom on her own when she shares these thoughts about, for example, saying, hey, look, the most important thing about a lie such as this is not the lie itself, but why the person was actually lying, because now you have to ask yourself, what could they gain from lying? And then you have to go into that mindset and kind of just play it through to see if this is a danger for you. And Lawrence's approach here is, I'll do it anyway, because either way I can profit from it, which is a merchant philosophy, right? I'll go in, I'll be very careful, I'll be hesitant, but I'll bite and see where this leads me. And when I do find out that there, like when the signs pile up that there's something fishy going on, maybe I can use that to my advantage to a degree, right? Be that with the authorities, or be that by just going to a merchant's guild or to other merchants and be like, hey, look, there's some shady shit going on. We might be able to, you know, make sure these people are arrested or kind of just they're ostracized by the merchant community, but profit for ourselves from it, right? And he's complimenting her tale, and she says later, yeah, she kind of like she kind of like knew that he wasn't being 100% honest. I mean, he definitely doesn't mind her tale. Maybe he even likes it visually, but he's boasting it up, right? It's merchant speak. But she's telling, yeah, like my ears have saved many friends from danger, and then she's smelling the rain, which typical thing for animals that when there's especially also when there's natural catastrophes happening, you do see a lot that animals are very quick to pick that up, right? Before you even can tell as a human being that it is happening, and they flee in advance. The same is like for a storm coming or whatever. There's a saying like where I'm from, it's like when the I don't know, what's the name for that bird? When the birds fly low, it means there's rain afoot, right? Rain is coming. So yeah, maybe we humans over the time, right, of the time of our evolution, as we have developed tools for ourselves, right, to protect us from the harsh outside environment of our protect us from immediate threats, be that predators, be that nature itself. We have become more and more separated from nature itself. We have become more and more isolated from that, and with all of the advantages that modern technological society does have, it protects us from death, from illness, from whatever, right? It holds us warm in the winter, but maybe we've lost some of the sense that we used to have when it comes to being connected to nature, right? Being able to read nature, because we don't have that experience, neither in our generational societal learning experience, nor do we have it in our, maybe even in our genetics to a degree, because certain genes, these days we do know that depending on different environmental factors that are put upon us, that different genes can be activated and deactivated within our organism, right? Like the transgression? No, I don't think transgression. The transcription, exactly. The transcription of certain genes can be lowered in the amount or heightened in the amount, which means these genes are produced more or less, or the thing that the gene tells you to produce, like, and most of the time it's proteins, right? The proteins are produced more or less depending on the outside factors that we have. I think one of the main examples is like lactose intolerance. Like some areas had a vibrant culture of using cows and other animals for milk production, right? To like substitute certain pieces of our nutrition or to add to it, right? And over the years, we have developed this ability that in the beginning of our lives, all of us have, right? The enzymes that are being produced that split the sugar, right? Lactose, which is a double sugar, right? It consists of two pieces of mono sugar, whatever you want to call them, right? I'm not that great at when it comes to chemistry, okay? Like, it's been a while in chemistry, but it splits that open, right? And turns it into a sugar that we can take in, right? And that we can save for ourselves and that our intestines can take in properly. Now, if we do not have enough of that enzyme, that means a lot of lactose is going to be within our guts, right? Within our intestines. And in the end, that is kind of causing a lot of like, a lot of inflammation. It's causing a lot of inflammation in our intestines, which in the end can be a real problem for us, right? Like I said, certain regions have kind of adapted to produce that kind of enzyme throughout most of their lifetime, while other regions, especially Asia, I think, but also America, right? US and whatever, they haven't. So over those years, you do have a lot of people in the US especially who are lactose intolerant, right? And in Europe, there's less people who are lactose intolerant, although that's changing due to like the demographic changes and whatever. But it's very interesting, right? And to go away from that tangent, I do think that it is very cool to see that animals have instincts that we do not possess, right? And that is what 𝐏𝐢𝐏 can bring to the table here in this story. She can, with her sharpened instincts, with her kind of being able to exist between both worlds, right? Be, on the one hand, experienced in dealing with humans, at least over the years, right? Maybe not in modern times, but over the years. And at the same time, being able to be in tune with nature in general, she can kind of give Lawrence an edge in various capabilities beyond her just being nice company, right? Because I'm pretty sure Lawrence enjoys the company. Pretty sure that as a lonely traveling merchant, you do enjoy your company. Especially like I remember some of like the stuff that they had in the light novel when Lawrence kind of in his train of thought talked about how traveling merchants would sometimes recommend like buying a mare instead of like a stallion, just in case she turns into a human or something like that, some superstition, right? Because there's like this loneliness going on, that you don't have a companion going on as you travel through the different regions, and you have a lot of contacts, obviously, but most of that is business contacts. Yeah, coming back to this, these shots, look at this, it's amazing looking. And we do see a lot of previews of stuff that's gonna happen, but interestingly enough, not a lot of spoiler stuff, which I love. Absolutely love. Like, we see a couple of glimpses and like, okay, what could this be? But we don't know what it's gonna be, and that's great. And here we are. Rain is coming down and we're at the monastery. And he's quick, right? In finding a reason why 𝐏𝐢𝐏 can't show her entire face, because of the ears. They would be like a sore thumb. They would probably be like she's possessed by a demon or some shit. And as a result of that, he's like, her face is burned, right? And he's like very quick, like, this is my wife, which obviously is gonna be a very funny thing when it comes to like her hearing that and being like, oh, I can use that to just tease the fuck out of him, because this is the kind of person she is. I like this shot. I said that before, I love this shot, right? We do have the hallway, which is not in the middle, it's on the right side. We have a weight on the right side, of the right side being very busy, but also very gray, right? We have doors, we have stairs leading up. That all of that makes it interesting, and the hallways going down. You see the basic structure of like masonry, which you would see like in European monasteries and whatever when you go visit all of those. And you do have the courtyard, which can't be amiss in a place like this. And the courtyard is to the side, right? You do have another weight here. I'm sure if you like golden ratioed this, the middle point of the golden ratio would be somewhere around where Lawrence is, because there's a lot of shit there, right? And this is like the other side, the left side is more open, but you do feel the downpour coming in. You do see the atmosphere going. But it's really well done with the green that is kind of lighting the whole shot up, and the kind of the tower in the distance, which is somewhat obscured by the rain and the fog that's going on. It really gives you a sense of depth to the shot itself. But yeah, he's coming in and he's turning around because he notices immediately. He's like, oh no, okay. First of all, let me close the door so nobody sees her. Because first of all, that would be a problem with like her head, like her tail and whatever. But it would also be a problem because she'd be walking around here, or she'd be standing around here naked and like she doesn't care. But she immediately picks that up, and she's like just starting to tease, right, with like the thing he said earlier where he found an excuse for her. And they talk about Martin Pals, and he turns around a couple of times where he's like, he wants to talk to her and immediately looks away because he's not comfortable with her just being so comfortable being in the bear. And you do love that, I do love that dynamic, right? The back and forth. And again, really cool shot because we have like him wringing out the clothes, right? And then a couple of seconds later, her doing the same with her tail, just wishing it around to get the water out of it. Yeah, and he throws that. I do hope YouTube is not gonna give me trouble because of that. And she's like, we should really maybe take a little bit more care of like your smell, right? But she's not negative about it. She doesn't mind that, I think, or at least you get the impression she's like just trying to kind of poke and prod a little bit. Yeah, and she gives him a compliment, which is really nice. And he's like talking about his work, right? This is his way also to distance himself because he just got a compliment by a pretty girl, right? Even if she's right, like some kind of spirit, whatever you want to call it. The visual is here, so it's difficult for him, and he's trying to distance himself because he's like, oh yeah, work, right? Work. What is something I can think of that is not gonna embarrass me? Work. And he's like, I'm careful enough that it doesn't affect my work, because obviously as a traveling merchant, you can't just shower or bathe every day, right? You don't always have a river nearby or whatever. And she's like, I like the beard. Though I prefer it a little longer, like this. I don't know what she's saying here. Maybe she's just making a joke in terms of like extravagant, like extraordinary like beards, or she's like doing cat ear. I don't know what she's doing here or trying to do, but at the very least, you know, she's trying to kind of make fun of him in a lighthearted manner, which is her MO when she's interacting with him. We don't know if it's with other people. She can also be a little bit cheeky with other people. We see that later with the young merchant. But yeah. And he wants to go to the fire, not only because it's warm there, and it got worse with the rain, but also, yeah, that is a very important thing. But also because he wants to make contacts, right? But such a burn would be a part of who I am. And this is like where you get the wise wolf aspect, right? She's very immature in some ways, right? When it comes to food, when it comes to teasing, right? Maybe she learned that over the years, right? Sometimes you do have that development where in the beginning, like when you're young, when you're a kid or when you're a teenager, you are like that, right? You're more jokey, you're more open, whatever, right? You're more bright, you're more immature in some ways, right? You don't take everything so seriously. When you grow up, when you grow older, everything is gonna be serious, right? Everything is turning serious over time. But then later on in life, right, when you got a little bit of all of that behind you, you're gonna be like, okay, you know what? I don't have to be this serious, right? All of that I got behind me, that's on me. Right, I did some stuff, right? I've experienced some stuff. Stuff happened around me and to me, and I have more of a life experience now to look back on some things or look at certain situations and be like, you know what, it's fine, right? When back in the day when I just started to grow up, being in my 20s, 30s, whatever, I might have been really anxious about or serious about. But yeah. And we do exchange words with some partial nobility, right? Somebody who has a vineyard, and he's like, you can come visit me when you're in the area. I got my vineyard in, and this is how you make connections, right? And then you show up and you're like, hey, you remember me? We talked, and the dude's like, oh yeah, I remember that. And he's like, oh, would you be willing to I'd be interested in your wine, right? And this is how you make contacts. Young trader comes to him. He's like, damn, I had my eye on this guy as well. He introduces himself, but we do immediately see he's a little bit too much forcing that friendliness, right? The smile doesn't seem genuine to us. I don't know what it is, because in real life, obviously, sometimes you can see that with the crow's feet, if somebody's smiling with these little these little wrinkles on there. When you're very young, they're not going to show up all that much, but if somebody's smiling with the little wrinkles on there and with some other, there's some other muscles, we have hundreds of facial muscles, and if you don't smile for real, at least for some people, it's not foolproof, because some people can just force these muscles to work, right? But for a good amount of people, it is hard to smile with your entire face, right? A genuine smile, if you can't, if you don't mean it. So yeah, it has to be trained, or it has to be somewhat natural. Some people are naturals at it, to just do it on command. I mean, some people can cry on command, right? Yeah, and he's just trying to get in through Holo. I don't know if he's actually just being very forward and trying to just flirt with her, or if he is trying to get acquainted with her and then rope Lawrence into his scheme with that. But either way, we start to talk, and then later on, though, he's like, hold on, and you're like, you're testing my patience, it's food. But yeah, we do exchange that little crop thing that we found out is part of how she can potentially turn into her other form if she needs to. Also maybe is part of what lets her move, right? Because we did have the wheat. I don't quite remember that. It would be a little bit restrictive, but we'll talk about it surely. It'll come up again. He's like, pay me back at some point. He tries to establish that, I think, because then he asks for advice, right? He's like, what do you think? What do you think of that young man? And she's like, well, you're both young men to me. You gotta be more specific. Or he says, what do you think of that kid? Because for him, he's a kid, right? He's green behind the ears. Yeah, and we do silver coins and whatever. We have coin currency speculation, which is always kind of a half shady thing. I mean, it happens, right? Because back in the day, every duchess and whatever had its own currency, but it's risky, right? Because if you fail at it, you gotta have a problem, because you do need capital or any amount of wares to actually buy stuff. And she was like, he lied, I just don't know about which part. And the reason for the lie is more important. And he doesn't like being called a kid, which I do absolutely get. If you are in your 20s, right? Especially in your 20s, he is in his 20s. Later, it doesn't matter that much anymore. If somebody calls you that, it's like, whatever, you don't know, right? But if a young woman that you potentially find attractive calls you a kid, and you're 20, right? You're here like out here trying to prove yourself. You're out here being trying to become someone. Yeah, it's gonna hurt his pride, but I do always kind of get that sense that he, in the interactions, he's trying to get the upper hand a little bit, or maintain a modicum of control, right? A modicum of control over himself, right? Over his own person, his pride, his self-confidence. And she always kind of undermines it, digs it, right? And then just before it crushes completely, she's building him up again because she likes him, actually, right? I mean, you do feel that chemistry going on. So yeah. And he's going to bite either way. We do have like a little talk. She heard the sermon, and we have a little bit of a talk about religion. Interesting how the times change, right? The church rises up. Back in the day, the church didn't have that much power. Now they're starting to fail again and trying to desperately hold on to that power. We did hear that, like in the first episode, kind of through the grapevines. But they are still important, right? They're still tied to the state at that point, I would assume. And again, great shot. Look at that. Like we are slowly, right, making the scene 3D, and then we turn around and we do have 4 layers here. The background layer of the building, we do have Lawrence, we do have the well in between them, kind of like separating them almost on a metaphorical level as well, because they are worlds apart, right? And Holo in the foreground, not quite within within focus, right? She's slightly out of focus because we shifted the focus onto Lawrence, but yeah. Must also be a change of the times. The world has changed a lot, but she hasn't, right? And that's a problem. Not a problem like in general, but this is hard to deal with for her to a degree. And he's comforting her, and she's like, that's a disgrace that you're comforting me. But she's happy, right? She's saying it like gotta maintain her pride. Again, look at this cool shot, right? On the one hand, we do have the building, cramped spaces, whatever, dark. And on the other hand, open sky and wide, and the direct divide here, right? Or nature versus city, right? Like the wild versus civilization. You can see that on many levels. And now we have a divide again. Merchant and them. They're doing an exchange, but they're divided in where they stand, right? But yeah, they're traveling. And this is like the shot where I was like, wow. Okay, I didn't know what to think of the art style in general, right? But I do really love it at this point because it feels like it's a painting. Like a lot of the art style, some of it is CG where I'm like, but a lot of this art style feels like it's a painting. And I do really like it because in the beginning I thought it was more like they do the character models, right? I thought everything is like that. So I was like, I don't know, there's this hyper modern, like shiny, whatever, but it's not. We actually use the nature so well, right? It's just a fucking painting, and it's beautiful. And I do think that it, in a way, emulates how the old series also had its very unique art style. Maybe even not as unique as this one, but and definitely not the same art style, but it's emulating kind of the differentness of how the environments here are drawn in context to some other anime I've seen, to a lot of anime I've seen. I mean, it's definitely not the most unique, right? In the terms of like, I've never seen this, but it definitely sets itself apart by just being different, right? Looking a lot like a painting. Like you would just put this down, like you would see something like that on a Bob Ross painting, right? But yeah, and we do tease again, and we do have that moment where this show proves that it can do comedy and lightheartedness and slice of life, but can immediately switch to serious, right? Serious moments, heartfelt moments that go to the core of the human experience, in this case anxiety and trauma, right? Near-death experience in this case, fleeing with other merchants, right? Having to leave behind the merchant that you maybe have had good relations with, that you were friends with, because they got killed by wolves, right? And this is a point of resentment and fear for you, right? Wolves are the enemy. And you see that in his eyes. Very well done, very well done. The flashback too, right, with how dark it is and how like gray bluish colored it is. How like blurry it is too. But she realizes that and she's like sorry. And she thinks about that throughout all of their interactions. We do see a little bit, and he's like, yeah, I'm mad. But at least he's honest, right? He's not being like, fuck you. He's like not saying anything, and she's like, you're mad? And he's like, yeah, I'm kind of mad. But later on, she makes up for that. She's like, look, it's both ways, right? Humans were the enemy, right? They're hunting us. Obviously, because we're dangerous creatures, but yeah. But then she turns around with a smile and she's like, we even know. And I do think he can accept that. And I really like that. It's like you and I have lived in completely different worlds, like the visual metaphor we had throughout the entire episode. Yeah. Great way to do it. I did really love this episode a lot more than I did the first one. I didn't hate the first one. I didn't dislike the first one. I was like hopefully optimistic, and now I'm kind of secure in the fact that we're probably gonna get a really nice, enjoyable show that has a very different vibe from other shows that we've seen, to be fair. But it's gonna be a very interesting show, a very comforting one probably too, right? So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Yeah, if you did like my video, my review, in this case, give me a like, subscribe to the channel if you wanna hear or see more. And that's kind of it with Spice and Wolf, episode 2, right? Check out the Discord, check out the Patreon. On Patreon, there's actually a timer reaction of like timer/pip reaction of Spice and Wolf episode 2. So there you go, right? If you're interested in that. It's the lowest tier, so for all my patrons who support me, who are interested in seeing that. Other than that, I'll see you in the next review or reaction, or whatever you tune into.